In today's episode, we explore the tragic death of Kaylee Anthony and her mother, Casey Anthony. Now on with the show.
And good morning, everybody. And this is Joyce. Joyce knows who done it. I have another fascinating case for us today. I just want to welcome you all for all the new subscribers. I love it. Please make sure that you like it, you subscribe, you thumbs up. That it will really be helpful for this channel. I'd like to see this channel grow. I think this has a lot of potential just to be a lot of fun, especially if you like whodunits, and maybe you and I have come up with the same answer. The case I'm going to do today is about a 2-year-old little girl and her disappearance in 2008. Um, I have a question about the mother, and maybe we should think about this. Is this mother a sociopath? Now, I can't diagnose her. I'm not a doctor, but um, I can have an opinion on that, but we'll tell the story and we'll find out if she is a sociopath or just a heck of a liar. Um, the story is going to be about Casey Marie Anthony and the disappearance and subsequent murder of her daughter, Kaylee Anthony. Casey I think she was just very confused. She was 19 years old when she had the child. And I think she was torn between wanting to be a mother and wanting to be out and party because she still was a teenager. I'm not excusing her behavior, not at all, but there's always a reason for something. Casey lived with her parents. By the way, Casey was born March 19th, 1986 in Warren, Ohio. The family had moved to the suburbs of Orlando, Florida, and she was living there. Her mother, Cindy, was a nursing assistant, and her father, George, was a retired police officer. Early on, the family knew that Casey just had some problems. Casey was a habitual thief. She would steal from anybody. This is all alleged and for entertainment only. Let me put that out there first. She was a liar. She was deceptive. You basically couldn't believe a word that she said. For example, she was supposed to be graduating from high school, and her mother kept reminding her to get your cap and gown. You need to get your cap and gown. And she wasn't responding. She wasn't doing anything. She wasn't going after it. So her parents ended up talking to the school and talked to the principal to find out that there was not going to be any cap and gown. And they knew the reason why, but they went and they confronted her with it. And they asked her, "Do you remember the cap and gown? You're supposed to have gotten that so we can, get you ready for graduation." And right away, Casey becomes defensive. The tears start coming. And then she says to them, "Well, I took an online class and I took this whole online class for this semester and they did not give me credit for it. So now I'm short of credits because the school did say she was short of credits. So she knew how to keep the lies close to the truth. That's what expert liars do, by the way. Um, Only to find out that actually there was no online class, there was no credit shortage. Casey had decided on her own that she was dropping out of school, and that's what she did. She didn't bother to tell her parents, but that's what she did. And in addition, she always tried to pretend like she was a virginal girl, but in actuality, she had started having sexual relations at a very young age, so much so that she got pregnant. And nobody in the house knew. And it was her and a brother and her parents. Nobody knew until she got too far along, 7 or 8 months, and she couldn't hide it anymore. So she had to confess what she had done. Now, once the baby was born, they wanted to find out who was the father. And Casey was pointing out several men, and they would get this DNA test. No father. There was never anyone that was the father. They don't even know to this day. So at this point, being the mother caretaker that Cindy was, you think of someone as an assistant nurse, caretaking is what they do. But in this episode, I'm not going to look at Cindy or George. I'm just going to put it like that. But Cindy did offer to adopt uh, Kaylee, so Casey could go on with her life. But mm-mm. Casey did not want to have it. She did not want her mother adopting her. She was going to do this herself. So on August 9th, 2005, Kaylee was born. Casey, again, was 19 years old. Now you've got a house with two women in the house, two mothers. And uh, actually, Cindy was doing more care of Kaylee than Casey was. Whatever was going on or any events that Casey wanted to go and do outside of the house, the mom was constantly taking care of this child. Casey wanted to go to the parties. Um, at one point, they really said to her that she needed to get a job. So she went and she said that she was an event planner for Universal Studios. And that was her way to get out at night, leave the kid with her parents, and go and party. Um, so that made more and more Cindy feel like she was the parent to this child. And then in May 2008, uh, Casey meets a young man that's new to town. His name was Tony, but she talked to him about being married and having a family or taking care of her child, and he was like, no, no, he didn't want to be involved in that. He was having a good time, okay, and that's what she was to him, just a good time. But the last thing he wanted to do was be tied down with the child. So now we're at about June 15th, 2008, and Casey had been coming and going and living her best life, I guess. But Cindy and Casey ended up having a big fight that night because Cindy found out that Casey stole money from Casey's grandmother, or in other words, Cindy's mother. She stole $300 from her grandmother. And they really got into a physical fight, so much so that Cindy wanted Casey out of the house as soon as possible. And so the next day, the family got up, went about their day, and actually Casey did take leave. Actually, Cindy wanted her to leave, but leave Kaylee. Okay. But ended up that Casey got up when everyone else was gone and she left and went to stay with this particular boyfriend with Kaylee. And then less than 24 hours later, Kaylee disappeared. Now a few weeks have passed and Cindy wants to see Kaylee, her granddaughter. She calls Casey and she implores her to bring Kaylee over. Let's spend some time together. We love you, Casey, all of that. And Casey lies again and says, yes, she'll bring her over. And she never does. Instead, Casey starts going out and partying more and more. So much so that when she actually went to um, the boyfriend's house, the night that Kaylee disappeared, she never bothered to even tell him that the baby had disappeared. Um, Casey also took her parents' car when she left. They did not, she wasn't supposed to have done that, but she took the car. And she ended up placing that car in a parking lot and just leaving it there. Apparently, it had run out of gas. Now, after June 16th of 2008, Casey was helping a friend out. And Casey had the friend's car because she had left her parents' car in a parking lot, abandoned it. So this friend allowed Casey to use her car while she was out of town. And with that, Casey had the keys to this young lady's house. Casey then proceeds to go in the girl's house, go through her things, steal things, including her checkbook with all her checks in there. Casey then proceeds to go on a huge shopping spree and spends every dime of this girl's money. The girl who's out of town on vacation, who's going to need that money. Casey spends it all up on herself. And as later was found out via receipts, she never bought anything for a child, a toddler, not diapers, not formula, not toys, clothes, nothing at all. Now, weeks later, George gets an impound notice on his door. They had stuck it to his door, found it, his car had been taken to an impound lot. They go to that lot to retrieve this car because they knew that Casey had taken it. When they walk up on the car, the stench of death is absolutely overwhelming. So much so that I'm surprised George retired police officer, did not call the police himself. Instead, they ended up opening up the trunk and they found garbage in the trunk. But George knew that garbage has one smell, but the smell of death, the fluids from the decomposition, has a completely different smell. Now it's July 15th, and Cindy is at her wits' end. She has had so much of her daughter. Like, I don't know why that didn't happen before, but she's had enough. She hasn't seen Kaylee. She's not seeing Casey. Cindy, along with the young lady who Casey stole the money from, they go over to the apartment of Casey's boyfriend. She opens the door and she basically drags her out that apartment into her car. Now, as she is driving around with Casey in the car, she is calling the police. She made a total of at least 3 calls in the car, telling the police that, I've got my daughter here. She has done grand larceny. She's auto theft, and nobody stops along the way to pick this person up. Now, I know we're looking at this in high retrospect, right? So we can think back and say, well, I would have drove to the police station, but that was what was happening at that time. Emotions were super high. Now, finally, they come back over to Cindy and George's house, and they have Casey. And Cindy finally confronts her and says, "Where is Kaylee? I have not seen her in over a month. Where is she?" And Casey finally comes up with this fabricated story and says that she is with the nanny. And Cindy wants to know what nanny. And she says, Zanita or Zanny. It is Zanny, the nanny. So now Cindy is like, oh my goodness, let's go get her. We're going to go get her. We'll get her back, because Casey is trying to make it seem like they kidnapped her. Okay. So they drive around, and now suddenly Casey doesn't even remember where the lady lives. Okay. They're driving around, and Cindy is going crazy. They end up at an apartment complex where they go to an apartment, knock on the door. Nobody is in that apartment. So now 31 days have passed since Kaylee's disappearance. Casey has never called the police. It is Cindy who has to call the police to find out where is my grandchild. And like I said, the cops found out. The cops, I'll tell you this, they initially, I think they always suspected Casey because she's the mother. And 31 days and you haven't called about her being missing? No, something doesn't sound right. The cops, like I said, end up finding Casey's boyfriend, and he does say that she came over the night that Kaylee was missing. They had a romantic, intimate night, and Casey never talked about Kaylee nor this nanny. Okay. Um, Casey tries to say that she got a mystery call, like a ransom type of call, and they put Kaylee on the phone to speak to her, to let her know that I guess she was still alive and you can come get her. And then the phone disconnected. Well, as it turned out, the investigators did check that lead, and there was never any call made to her cell phone from anywhere that she said she was. There was no phone call. Now, the surprise, the excuse me, investigators are very suspicious, and they start to ask her about her job. And she's again telling them that she works at Universal Studios and she's a party planner. So the police say, okay, take us to your job. And so she does. Now she gets there and the guards won't even let her in. They don't know who in the world she is. And they had been working there for years, but they don't know her. But she's supposed to have been there at this point now 4 years. They don't know her. So the cops demand that they open up the doors and the gates, and then she comes in, Casey, and then they go into the building and they ask her, "Well, show us your office so that we know that you really work here." Now Casey is stumbling around in this building, lost as can be. She does not know where she's going. She's opening up random doors. It's not her office, da da da. And then the police basically tell her, "Stop. You do not work here." And she admitted she did not work at Universal Studios. Sociopath? Anyways, they end up arresting her, okay, because they were suspicious anyways. So on July 16th, 2008, Casey was arrested. Um, in comes Jose Baez. Jose Baez is an attorney in Florida, and one of the inmates that was with Casey suggested him. Now, on August 21st, 2008, a guy named, I think it's Gennard Padilla, he was a bounty hunter, and he bailed Casey out because he thought, okay, we're gonna find Kaylee, we're gonna get to the bottom of this, we're gonna get the kidnappers, and anybody that watches the news or does anything knows that if a child is kidnapped, stolen, snatched, abducted, whatever word you want to use, they usually only live about 24 hours. That person has to get rid of them. Now we're talking about months, okay? So she gets out. He's thinking she's going to help find her child. Instead, what does she do? She goes and parties. She goes to like a best body contest and dancing around. And there's photos of it out there. Just go to YouTube or go to Google. That's your friend, and you will see that's what she's doing. So now on October 14th, 2008, Casey is indicted. First degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and then lying to police. Now, 6 months after um, the disappearance of Kaylee, someone finds her body. Where it was laid, there had been she was in like some woods, and there had been a flood, big rainstorm, a big flood, and it kind of washed it up. There, they found the human remains. The police and investigators and all those they came out there. They found the skull. It was wrapped with duct tape. Um, the body was in just fragments where it had been eaten by animals and things that are in the forest. Along with the child, they found two trash bags, a laundry bag, a Winnie the Pooh blanket that belonged to her, and her clothing items. They had to do a DNA test, and the DNA test proved that it was actually Kaylee. So they proceed with the trial, and the trial is 6 weeks from between May to July of 2011. The prosecutors, what they said the motive was that Casey wanted a carefree life. She didn't want any kids. She wanted to be in this relationship. That's me saying that. That's what I think. Um, the defense had a different argument because one of the things that the prosecutors had, they had forensics come out there in that old car of George's that was had been driven around, and the garbage bags were found in the trunk. The smell of death was so strong that they were able to vacuum capture air samples. And in those samples, it tested positive for chloroform as well as human decomposition fluids was in that. Now, Jose Baez argued that those samples were so old and it shouldn't really count, and that science that they were using wasn't sound because it was too new. Well, science has to start somewhere, but that's what he argued. In addition, he blamed Casey's father, George, for all of this because he said initially that George sexually abused Casey ever since she was a little girl. Now, since then, that has all been found untrue. That was not true. In addition, they said that this is what Jose Baez put out as her defense, that it was a swimming accident and that Kaylee was in the pool and she drowned. And then George said, "Don't worry about it, just go and I'll take care of it." Completely throwing her father under the bus. And there was no proof. There was no proof that ever happened. Jose Baez said that even though he said those things, he said, "I don't have to prove that. It is your job to prove it didn't happen." And that is what they went on. Ended up that it wasn't enough evidence, the jury said. And so she was not found guilty of murder or aggravated child abuse. She was only charged with a misdemeanor, which required her to stay in, I guess it was lying to the police, but for her to stay in jail for 1 month, but she didn't even do that much because she got credit for the time that she was already in there. So now the question is, who did this? What motivated them? And I'll be back. Okay, so I'm only going to look at Casey. My thought is this: any female can be a mother. That's a biological, okay? But it's a whole nother person that can be a mommy and be there for their child and put the party into the side and all of that. And everybody is not built that way. That happens today. That doesn't go to death, but it still goes on to this day. Now, Casey's birthday is March 19th, 1986. And so I have to use 2008 as my universal year, which is a 1. And so for Casey, personal year was a 5. And so I always know a 5 year is about severity. It's about a lot of changes. It's a lot about people coming and going out of your life. It's about what can I say? What can I do? What can I get away with? Um, Lots of moving and changing. And she was doing all that. Lots of driving around, short distance trips, driving her daughter around. In fact, it's alleged that she had Casey in her trunk and drove around town for like 5 hours before she left that car. 5 hours or 5 days. Nevertheless, she was in a number 5 year, a very severe year. That's why she would have gotten kicked out and everything else. And what supports that is her life path of a number 1. And for those who are in my class, number 1, the ill dignified is selfish, me first. So with Casey having this young child and Cindy being so in love with Kaylee, that number 1 would have been triggered like crazy. That you're paying somebody else more attention than me. It's about me, 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 me. Um, Also, I see in Casey's chart that she had freedom. This wasn't destiny. This could have not happened. She had the freedom of choice to say, I'm going to be a grown up, or I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to love my child more than loving the streets or being in love with love. She's that type. She's in love with being in love. And then her conflicts were a combination of some things she likes to do privately and some things what's going to be publicly. Her rising is in Pisces, and she's got one, two, three, four. So she's got a stellium in Pisces. So she's real, real Pisces. Um, a rising in Pisces can mean many things. Okay, so it can be lazy because she didn't want to work, and she didn't even work. She spent 4 years lying that she worked at Universal Studios when she could actually worked at Universal Studios, but she did. It makes her oversensitive. It makes her very pessimistic. Um, it also makes her subject to making very poor choices. With rising in with a rising in Pisces, you have Jupiter and you have Neptune right there. So Jupiter gives her the love of life and I want to be free and I want to get out and explore. It also gives her very good luck. Remember that. She's got very good luck on her side. The Neptune side of her is more dreamy, watery, very much a restlessness. Would have given her a wanderlust, okay? This very secretive behavior. Even having a difficult time distinguishing reality from fantasy. Her sun is in Pisces. There again, this lady was very intuitive. She could have been a real humanitarian. She could have been very wise. It was her lack of maturity. And in a sense, and I don't really want to do this, but in a sense, you've got to also look at the parents. Were they giving too much? Because it seems as though they were. Her moon is in Cancer. Listen to this. Her rising is in Pisces. Her sun is in Pisces. Her moon is in Cancer. Her Mercury is in Pisces. Her Jupiter is in Pisces. Um, she was a very over emotional young lady and very dreamy, really in love with being in love, a romantic type. But also, this would have given her a dark side to her where she could commit a crime like this. It would be that's just the nature of the beast. She would have and could have committed a crime like this, and she did. Excuse me, simply because she can be so obsessed with the person that she's in love with. And when this Tony told her that he didn't want children or anything, what did she do? Made sure that didn't happen so they could have this relationship because she wanted to have this profound relationship. She was too immature to know that if you can't accept me and my child, then you are a waste of my time. Goodbye. But she couldn't do that. She would be more obsessed and she would think with her heart more than her head. She had escapist tendencies. She had drinking problems and she probably did drugs as well that would have gone hand in hand with that Jupiter in that Pisces. And then she has a sun in Sagittarius and Sagittarius in Saturn. Saturn is about daddy lessons. It's about a strict karmic lesson for you, and your lesson was to sit out and to be have restrictions. You can't restrict a Saturn, they feel, no matter what. And that child was the restriction on her that she did not want to have. She did not want to be bothered with. So, did she do this? Absolutely. Absolutely. And those people that know the dark side of Pisces, they know that went out in that deep water and she got lost in it. Lost, searching for this love of her life that wasn't out there to begin with. Feeling like her child was a burden to her and a restriction to her freedom when that really wasn't true. She also felt the same way about her parents, especially her mother, putting restrictions on her. Well, she's 19, so that's a teenager. So you would still, as a responsible adult, put restrictions on her. I don't think they really backed them up as much until they finally had that blow up. So what do I think happened? I think Casey had enough. She had enough of Kaylee and the responsibility of taking care of her because she hadn't really taken care of her on her own. Okay. And 24 hours of taking care of her was more than what she wanted to do. It was bogging her down. I think that Casey wanted this guy. I think that Casey was very jealous as a number one life path. She was very jealous of the attention that Kaylee was getting, but she wasn't getting. She couldn't understand that all the lies and the deception and the stealing wasn't going to lead to this great relationship with her parents. She thought that she was portraying an image, but your family sees right through you. So what do I think happened? I think um, Casey either drugged that child or used the chloroform because they had chloroform fumes were in that trunk to um, put her to sleep. I think that she taped her mouth or her head up. Her head was taped, and they found that the same exact tape that was used on the baby was in the family's garage on a particular gas can. I think that that's what she did. I think she wrapped her in her blanket with her clothes on. I think that she put her in a Target bag. I think that she put her in some trash bags. And I think that she got rid of her. Now, some speculate that she drowned her in addition. And I'm going to tell you that is a very good possibility. And now I just want to do a couple of cards on this particular person. I don't always do the cards, but I'm going to tell you what I did last night. I was working on this last night. And so I dealt some cards on it, right? And boom, it came up right away. Ten of Swords. Oh, okay. I see what happened. You killed this child. I asked about her. Give me just a moment. Yeah, she felt blocked. This is the Knight of Swords, and this usually goes this way. That's someone with a lot of energy. I don't know if you guys can see that. Hold up a sec. Okay, I had to move that light. That was so bright. So we have the Knight of uh, Swords. This is the Thoth deck, by the way. The Knight of Swords. So she felt stuck. Okay, she felt stuck being around her parents, having to live this life where she was working. and being around this child. She felt very stuck. And then she was weighing back and forth her options. This is adjustment. This is sort of like the justice card. She was trying to make a decision on what to do with this child. And why was she trying to do this? What was this based on? And this is based on the Princess of Swords. This is her. Like she didn't want to lose that relationship. This is about the news you would get. It's like a page. The news she would get if she lost that relationship. The energy was not going to go. This is in reverse. It should be this way, just booming with energy and truth and victory. But it's in reverse. So that tells me that she was a liar. Okay. This is truth, victory, good messages. She was a liar. So what was hanging over her was failure, and it's in reverse. So it doesn't mean that this is failure and this is win. It's more failure. She felt like a failure. She felt having this child was a failure, completely a failure. This was not going to work out for her, and the relationship wasn't working out. That relationship was troubled, and she became the fool. This is the fool card. This is her saying, "I'm going to get a fresh new start. I'm gonna like wipe the slate clean." Like, how do you wipe the slate clean of your child? But that's what she was wanting to do. She wanted a complete, fresh start, everything brand new, starting at square one. And she went for it. And then the Queen of Swords, she took action. She took sharp actions. The Queen of Swords is really someone that is intelligent, um, who is it seems cold a little bit, but not really. And I think she took actions. I think she had fear of her mother, and I think this is more of her mother. Her actions were to hurt her mother. And what did she do? Here is the Ten of Swords, and that's what I got last night. What did she do? She killed that little girl. This is called the ruin. It's ruined. It's the Ten of Swords. And she put into their family relationship, into her child's life, into her life the way it could have been. She ended it all herself. And ultimately, she has the defeat card. Okay. Ultimately, did she kill this little girl? Yes, she did. Did George do it? No, nobody else did it. She would lie, 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 lie. Even if she was caught, she would not tell the truth until she was deeply pushed up into a corner. But how did she get off? Jupiter. She had Jupiter with Pisces in it, uh, which is her rising, and that's also in her chart. And that brings you an abundance of good luck and getting out of tight spots. And that is how she got away with it. Guys, thank you so much for looking at this case with me. Until next time, subscribe,